Welcome to the first part of the Ultimate HTML and CSS series. In this series, I'm going to take you on a journey and teach you all the skills you need to build fast and beautiful websites that look great on all kinds of devices. I'm assuming you know nothing about HTML or CSS and want to learn everything from scratch. So in the first part of this series, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of web development with HTML and CSS. In the second part, we'll explore the advanced concepts. And in the third part, we'll put everything together and build a beautiful, responsive, and blazingly fast website. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe as we upload new videos all the time. Now let's jump in and get started. All right, let's talk about the tools you need to take this course. For the starter, you need a code editor. There's so many code editors out there, like Visual Studio Code or VS Code, Sublime Text, Atom, and so on. In this course, I'm going to use VS Code along with a few extensions for starting a web server and formatting our code. You're welcome to use your favorite code editor if you know what you're doing, but otherwise, head over to code.visualstudio.com and download the latest version of VS Code. Now here inside VS Code, we're going to install a couple of extensions. So let's open the extensions panel and search for Prettier. Here's the extension we're going to install, Prettier Code Formatter. With this extension, we can format our code and make it pretty. This is a very popular extension. As you can see, it's been downloaded more than 9 million times. So over here, you're going to have an install button. Just click it and you're done. Next, we're going to install another extension called Live Server. With this, we can launch our website inside a development web server. Again, this is a very popular extension. It's been downloaded almost 8 million times. Now, in addition to these, we're going to use a browser to view and test our web pages. Again, you can use your favorite browser, but in this course, I'm going to use Google Chrome, and I encourage you to use the same browser so you can easily follow the course. We're going to start our web development journey here. In every section, you will learn something new about web development, and by the end of this course, you will put all of this together to build a beautiful web page. In this section, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of web development. You'll learn the languages and tools used in web development, as well as the key concepts and vocabulary such as URL, HTTP, DOM, and so on. We're also going to talk about how websites work, so you will understand what exactly happens under the hood when you use your browser to visit a website. You will also learn how to inspect network traffic using Chrome DevTools, which is a very powerful tool used by front-end developers. We'll also talk about the basics of HTML and CSS and validating web pages, which is something a lot of developers miss. This is going to be an awesome journey, so let's jump in and get started. This course is your first step towards becoming a web developer. So let me give you a simple roadmap to know where you are and where you should go next. Every website has two parts, a front end and a back end. The front end is the part that you see in your browser and interact with, all the visual aspects. The back end is the part that powers the front end. It's behind the scenes and it's mainly about storing data in databases and providing it to the front end. So web development jobs fall into three main categories: front-end development, back-end development, and full-stack development, which involves both front-end and back-end development. Front-end developers use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build front-ends. Back-end developers have different sets of tools available to them, which is outside the scope of this course. So let's talk about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is short for Hypertext Markup Language. I know it's a mouthful, but basically we use HTML to define the building blocks of our web pages. CSS is short for Cascading Style Sheet and is used for styling web pages and making them beautiful. JavaScript is used for adding functionality to web pages. Let me give you an analogy. Think of a building. A building in the real world is like a web page on the internet. It has a skeleton or structure. It can have pretty walls, windows, and tiles, and it can have certain functionality. For example, when we press the elevator button, it comes to pick us up. Here's a real example. Let's say we want to build a website like Twitter. For each tweet, we want to have a layout like this. So first we use HTML to define all the building blocks of this layout. What are these building blocks here? An image, some text indicating the user's Twitter handle, another block of text containing the message, and 3 icons for commenting, retweeting, and liking the tweet. We use HTML to add these building blocks to our web page. Then we use CSS to give it visual effects. For example, with CSS, we can make the font bold, we can make our image round, we can add some padding around here, we can change the color of these icons and define their look when we hover over them. So CSS is all about aesthetics or visual effects. With CSS, we can also create beautiful animations. Now, most web pages these days are interactive. They respond to our actions like clicks and scrolls. This is where JavaScript comes in. With JavaScript, we can add functionality or behavior to our web pages. For example, we can like a tweet. So JavaScript is a programming language, while HTML and CSS are not, meaning we cannot use them to tell computers what to do. We use them to define the building blocks of our web pages and style them. Every web page you have seen on the internet is built with these 3 languages. So the better you learn and understand these languages and their features, the better you will be at front-end development. So your front-end development journey starts with HTML and CSS. I would say if you spend 3 to 5 hours every day studying and coding, you should be able to have a reasonable understanding of these 2 languages in about a month or a month and a half. Once you learn these languages, then you need to learn JavaScript. I have a separate series for learning JavaScript. So after finishing this series, you may want to enroll in that series. I would say learning JavaScript would probably take another 6 weeks of your time. Of course, you're not going to be a JavaScript expert in just 6 weeks, but you will have a reasonable understanding of it, and you will learn more as you work on different projects. So the first 3 months is all about the fundamentals. Now, building websites often include a bunch of repetitive tasks. This is where front-end frameworks and libraries come in. A framework or a library comes with a lot of code that we can reuse in our websites. So they help us get the job done faster. That's why a lot of companies these days use one of these popular frameworks like React, Angular, or Vue. Now, technically, React is not a framework, it's a library. But subtle distinction aside, all these tools serve the same purpose. They help us build applications faster. Now, you don't need to learn all of these to get started. Different companies use different tools for different projects. So as you move from one project to another, you may want to learn about the other tools. If you're starting out, just focus on React because it's the most popular tool in this space. Once you learn React, you can always learn the other tools if needed. For React, you would probably need 1 to 2 months. Again, I have a comprehensive course on React. More than 40,000 people have taken this course and loved it. All right, what's the next step? Version control systems. We use a version control system to keep track of our project history and work collaboratively with others. There are many version control systems out there like Git, Subversion, Mercurial, and so on. But Git is the most popular tool in this space and is used in more than 70% of software companies. That's why you'll see it in almost every job description. I would say you would probably need 2 weeks for learning Git. And again, I have a comprehensive course for you. So these are the essential skills that every front-end developer must have. You'll see these listed on almost every job description. Now, different jobs require other skills, but these skills vary from one company to another. So you can learn these additional things in the future or on the job. For now, just focus on these 4 skills or 4 steps. Remember, less is more. Don't try to learn too many things quickly. You won't learn anything. You'll just waste your time. All right, that's your roadmap. Next, we're going to talk about how the web works. Have you ever wondered how the web works? In this lesson, I'm going to tell you exactly what happens the moment you type the address of a website into your browser and hit enter. As part of this, we're going to talk about a few important concepts and terms that you need to know as a web developer. So let's say we launch our browser and head over to a website like codewithmosh.com. Now, this address that we have in the browser address bar is called a URL, which is short for Uniform Resource Locator. Basically, it's a way to locate a resource on the internet. Resources can be web pages, also called HTML documents. They can be images, video files, fonts, and so on. So we type the URL of a website and hit enter. What happens now? Well, there are two pieces involved here. The browser, also called the client, and the computer or computers that host our target website. We refer to these as web servers or servers for short. This is what we call the client-server model. The client requests a service, the server provides that service. So our browser sends a message to the server and says, hey, give me the homepage of this website. This is kind of similar to how you send your friend a text message. You can think of your phone as the client sending the message and your friend's phone as the server receiving the message. Now back to our example. This message is formatted based on a protocol called HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You've probably noticed it before but never knew what it is. In simple terms, HTTP is a language that clients and servers use to talk to each other. It's not a programming language, it's just a plain textual language for communicating over the internet. We also have HTTPS, which is HTTP with encryption. So the messages exchanged between the client and the server are encrypted. Here's a simplified example of an HTTP message. With this message, the browser tells the server what it's looking for. So on the first line, it says that it wants to get a page or a file called index.html using HTTP version 1.1. Index.html often represents the homepage of websites. On the second line, we can see the host, that is codewithmosh.com. And on the third line, we can see the language that the client can accept, in this case, English. Now, don't worry about memorizing any of this. All I want you to understand here is that this message is structured based on the HTTP protocol that clients and servers understand. So the server receives this message, it figures out what the client is asking, and then it will send a message back to the client. The first message is called an HTTP request, and the second message is called an HTTP response. Every data exchange using the HTTP protocol involves two messages, a request and a response. Now, what is in the response? Here's a simplified example. On the first line, we see the version of HTTP protocol used, followed by a number which is the status code. 200 means successful or OK. Right below that, we can see the date and time of the response. Next, we can see the type of content the server is sending back to the client, in this case, text/HTML. And after that, we can see the HTML code or the HTML document that represents the homepage of codewithmosh.com. Of course, the actual HTML code is way longer. Now, as the browser reads this HTML document, it constructs what we call a DOM or a document object model. Don't let this fancy name scare you. This is a model that represents the objects or elements in our HTML document. What are these elements? All the building blocks of our page, like paragraphs of text, images, links, and other stuff. You will see this in action in the next lesson. Now, as the browser is reading this HTML document that is returned from the server, it discovers references to other resources in this document, like images, fonts, and other stuff. Each of these resources has an address or a URL. So for each resource, the browser sends a separate HTTP request to the server to fetch that resource. Many of these HTTP requests are sent in parallel, so we can see the page as quickly as possible. Once the browser has all the necessary resources, it will render the HTML document. Rendering an HTML document means displaying it. It's a fancy technical term we use often. So in a nutshell, our browser sends an HTTP request to the server and receives an HTTP response. This HTTP response contains an HTML document. The browser reads that HTML document to construct a document object model and render the page. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you all of these steps in action.